Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our next live stream. I'll be your producer for this session. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our speakers for today. Thank you for joining.
Anu, fancy seeing you here.
That's right, Chris. How are you? It's been a long time.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Happy Wednesday to you. Happy Tuesday to a lot of other people on the call. We're glad to be here today.
Right. Yeah, and also a special welcome for all the participants who are just joined us live. And just to reiterate, it is a live session, so you are seeing us speaking on live.
Yep, let's keep those moderators busy.
That's right.
All right, well, why don't you start us off and introduce yourself to everyone, Anu?
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Anupama Natarajan. You can call me as Anu. I'm based in Wellington, New Zealand. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and also an MVP for data platform and AI with 25 plus years of experience working in the IT industry. And of course, being an MCT, I encourage people to take certifications because certifications is another way you can validate whether you are ready for the role that you're going to take it up in your day-to-day job. And as well as in my job, I won't be able to cover the entire spectrum of the technology. And so because I'll be focusing on one part of the technology, but certification helps me to cover the entire spectrum. So that's why I always encourage people to take certifications.
Great. And do you have a slide showing people how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, definitely. Here it is. And so if people want to reach out to me, they can always reach out to me through my LinkedIn profile. I'm active on social media, so feel free to reach out to me even after this particular session.
Great. And
So how about you, Chris?
So I'm Chris Hyde. My pronouns are he, him. I'm here from Texas today. So you can get a hold of me on Blue Sky or LinkedIn as well. I'm not super active on either one, but I'm always happy to connect with people. We get a lot of requests when we do things. So drop a note in the chat that, hey, saw your session on PL-300, would like to connect. And I'd be happy to connect with you.
Excellent.
All right. So we've got all the intro stuff. So this is pretty cool. We're in week 2 of the 60 days of data and AI powered by the community, by people like Anu and myself. So we've got our cute little icons here. We've got SQL, we've got Fabric, we've got Power BI being held nicely by Fabric here. And you can follow the QR code. I'm sure our mods will drop the link in the chat and see what else is coming up. There's just a ton of things. There's contests, there's community content. Oh, speaking of contests, the Power BI Data Viz World Championships just kicked off last week. We've got 3 rounds, and then the live finale will be at FabCon in Barcelona. I'm told that the winner of the last Data Viz World Championships in Atlanta in March, I'm told that they weren't going to enter at all. It was a last minute thing. They entered, they won their round, and we got to see them up on stage doing Power BI live for the whole world.
That was quite interesting. So I would definitely encourage people if you are just want to give a try, go ahead and participate in these contests because it's pretty cool. You get an opportunity to present yourself in the stage, and then you can actually see how you can participate on live.
Yeah, that finale in March was something else. Those people were doing things in Power BI that I am not ready for myself. But I'm good at passing the exams, so we can at least help you with that piece. All right, what else do we have? speaking of passing exams, you might want to join a study group. So we've got a link here where you can do that. Get together with some other folks studying for the same test that you're planning on doing. And yeah, good luck.
Yeah, the study groups are there for all the different exams. So today we are going to talk about PL-300, but all the other data exams like DP-800, or you have got DP-600, DP-700. So we have got study groups available for that. So any certification you would like to pick, feel free to join these study groups and learn the tips and tricks of what it takes to prepare, as well as to participate in the taking up the exam. Just to say about that, so I want to just promote my user group. So in Wellington, today, this evening, Wednesday, 24th of June, we are having our study group for DP 800. So if you want to become, this is a SQL AI certification. So we are kickstarting session 1 today. It is a hybrid event. So you can go on to the meetup for Wellington Data Management and Analytics Community, and you should be able to join. And we are recording the session. So if you just join, you should be able to play back and watch it later.
Very nice. All those folks looking to do multiple exams all at the same time. I am impressed with you and a little bit scared too. So yeah, for data days, we've got some other contests and hands-on challenges. Again, we're covering all parts of the spectrum: Power BI, Fabric, and SQL Server. And it's a great way to find your community, whichever one of these products or what combination thereof you're working with. You can definitely find a bunch of friendly people doing the same things, having the same problems you are. All right. We've also got some opportunities to join different user panels and shape the future of Fabric, of Fabric IQ, and of the SQL product itself. So we'd encourage everyone to join these panels, contribute, get your voice heard.
That's right. So that is the important part. So whether you are working in Fabric or Fabric IQ or SQL, so yeah, I think every one of us, we work with our customers and we hear a lot of things around what works for them, what they would like to see as improvements. And these panels are really exactly for that, to share your experiences, share things that you would want to share it with Microsoft. So this is an opportunity for us to, just as Chris was saying, like to share our opinions and things and what we would like to see on how we would like want the product to be shaped.
All right, as I said, we kicked this off last week. So these are the first 2 weeks of sessions. If you missed one, you can go back to the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel, look under live, and catch the one you missed. If
That's
you
right.
want some,
So
yeah, I was going to say, if you want some second opinions on what we're talking about today, there was another version of that done yesterday. So if you want to hear, just another way of doing things, go ahead and watch that. That'll help you watch both for the full PL-300 experience.
Excellent. So yeah, we are going to talk about PL-300, the Power BI Data Analyst certification. And are you certified, Chris, with PL-300?
This is the one I'm not certified in. DP 600, 700, and 800, yes, but I'm still working on my PL-300. So
excellent.
This is good for me to do.
That's right. The participants can hear perspective. So I have passed PL-300, and then they can hear from both of our perspective. So what it took to get me certified, and what are you trying to do to get certified? So they can get both the perspective.
Excellent. So it's not just the two of us that are here today. We've got our great moderators in the chat. We want this to be as interactive as possible. So please get your questions in. They'll do their best to answer them. And maybe if it's an excellent question, they'll pass it along to us and we'll answer it live. So who have we got moderating today? I think we've got Kevin.
Yeah, so we have Kevin. And so Kevin, who is a data platform MVP. We have Heidi. Hi, Heidi. And Heidi is from APAC region. So hi to you, Heidi. So, and then we have got Tyler Rami. So welcome to all our moderators. And one of the thing is like Power BI has been there, and we almost celebrated the 10th year or the 10th birthday of Power BI. And it would be great to know like how many of you have been working in Power BI. So you are on the chat. Tell us about like how long you have been using Power BI for. Have you started using it from the get-go? It went live, or is it like I even started from 2013 as Excel plugins? If you remember the days of Power Pivot, the Power Query, and so that's how I started. And then eventually, like when the Power BI was launched, it was so nice to see everything in one product stack. So yeah, share your experience, like how long you have been working with Power BI. That would be great.
Great. And lots of questions in there. Let's make Taylor, Heidi, and Kevin really work hard for the next hour.
That's right. And you're in great hands, right? Like in the chat. So feel free to put your questions in the chat, and the more questions we can get, we can provide you more advice and the knowledge that we can share. Cool. So I'm going to talk to you about what are we going to cover in the next hour, right? Like Chris, like we are going to talk about the PL-300 certification. Because we have got only 60 minutes for this session, so we are not going to deep dive, and that's where the study groups are there for you. So we will touch on some of the important things that you need to know, especially if you are planning to take up the PL-300 certification. So we are going to talk to you about what is this exam is all about, and understanding about the Power BI workflow, and also like what are the different aspects of Power BI. So you can't build a report straight away, right? So you have to go through a workflow process, like get the data, cleanse the data, model the data, and then build your visuals and so on. So there is a process that you have to follow, and the certification will be focusing more around each and every aspect of that. So let us quickly dive into the Power BI as a topic along with the PL-300 certification. So before I jump on to PL-300, I think this is a common question I have seen, Chris, like even when I used to do the moderation, like people ask about, when do I take PL-300 versus when do I take a DP-600 or DP-700? So do you have any specific tips that you normally give to those participants?
Yeah, I think we see a lot of people there. They come that they've been using Power BI for a while, and now they're starting to get into Fabric now that it's integrated. So I think a lot of those people probably still want to start with the PL-300.
Yeah.
And that's then a good building block into DP-600, which does have some Power BI questions, but more about the Fabric infrastructure and lake houses and warehouses and what have you. And then you move on
to DP-700, but 600 is more the end-to-end of Fabric, right? So if you want to know, it doesn't go deep, but it is more around, covers the end-to-end spectrum of like everything in the different components within Fabric, really. And that's
right.
when you touch to the point, right, that we will have Power BI related questions with Fabric, because Power BI is part of Fabric now. So of course, like, so it covers the end-to-end spectrum. Whereas DP-700 is mainly targeted towards the data engineer, right? So pretty much all the ingestion activities, what are the different ways you can ingest the data into the Fabric platform. So I think if I am going to give you a recommendation, which certification you should be taking, of course, like if you are actually building reports and designing dashboards, modeling your data, go with Power BI, PL-300 certification. If you're a data engineer, day in, day out, that's what you are doing in your day-to-day job, go for DP-700. And even if you're a data engineer, I would recommend you to take a DP-600 too, because it is good to understand the whole Fabric ecosystem. And that certification helps you to understand the entire ecosystem. And so keep in mind, so you can just go and pick any of the certifications. One thing, if you notice it, and because I'm a Microsoft MCT, I'm really looking at the role-based certifications. If you notice that every Microsoft certification, I think it is around since 2016 or something, like they made everything as role-based certification. So it will be telling you exactly what is the role that you are going to perform in the organization, and the topics that is going to be relevant on how do you use the platform for your day-to-day activities for that role. So I think, so that itself, it says if you're a data engineer, then your first go-to is DP-700. And of course, like to understand the breadth of like what Fabric is all about, taking up DP-600 also makes sense. And similarly, if you're a data analyst, you're at the right session here to get prepared for the PL-300 certification. Cool. So the focus for PL-300 certification is all about like how do you deliver value for the business users using Power BI. So as I told you, right? So when you are working closely with your business stakeholders, like they would like to see a lot of insights, because these days organizations like they capture large volumes of data. So the best way to make sense of the data is to visualize the data in different forms like reports or dashboards, or now these data are also being used as a input for AI solutions. So to do that, you have to understand because all the data is not going to be clean. So I have never worked in an organization where I went there to build a report where everything is clean and I have to start building the report. There is always going to be like, okay, I have to bring the data from different data sources. I have to go and cleanse and prepare the data, model the data to make sure like it is following as the star schema model. So it is going to perform really well when I build my reports. And then I start building my visuals. So what do you say, Chris? Have you been to any organization where you didn't have to do anything, straight away get into building reports?
Well, there was the one time that I went back to a previous client where the things
Okay.
were still pretty nicely from when I was there before. But apart from that, no.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, if it is an existing client that you have already done the like a data, like a warehousing work or something, then it's good. But otherwise, like the first thing you will be looking at is the cleaning the data. And finally, once you build the reports, right, we don't stop with building the reports. We have to share the reports. And we have to secure the reports, because when we talk about data, we are dealing with sensitive information. So that's why there is a topic when we take PL-300. It's all about how do we manage and secure our Power BI reports. So, and I think that's what exactly they will be covering. And one additional thing to keep in mind is because you do a lot of transformations, then which means like you need to understand how to use Power Query, and there will be questions related to that. And similarly, DAX. So I think data analysis expressions, it is important that you need to be proficient, because there will be questions related to DAX. And that's why I would suggest these are two things that you have to also be focusing if you are planning to take PL-300 certification. So now I told you, right? It covers the entire spectrum, starting from preparation to securing your Power BI reports and dashboards. But when we talk about the PL-300, what the skills they will be measuring for the exam, so up to 25 to 30% of the questions, exam questions, will be on preparing data. Another 25 to 30% of the questions on model the data. Another 25 to 30% on visualize and analyze the data. And finally, the remaining 15 to 20% is on managing and securing Power BI reports. It's quite interesting, right? Because if you look at it, you can't go and say like, oh, I'm not going to look at modeling the data and I'll go and take the exam, because there is equal amount of questions across these topics. So it's not that you can skip one and go and take the exam. So you have to put your attention on each and every of this topic, and then you have to prepare them so that you can come out in flying colors once you take up the exam. So what do you suggest, Chris? Do you skip any topics, or you have to focus on all the topics?
You have to be brave because you will need about 70% or so of the questions right, to pass. So yeah, you could skip preparing data, but you need to get every single other question right. So that's a very brave approach.
And it's a risk. I want to take the risk. I will better learn about all the topics. And I think important thing with the exam, when you're taking up the exam, is right, like as Chris was mentioning, don't just read the question for the first time and then answer it, because it is important that you read the question multiple times, understand what they are trying to ask, because there can be nuances where we can miss it the first time when we read it. And so that's why I will encourage. And also, I take the approach of when I look at the answers, first thing is eliminate the answers that you think it's not going to be in the mix at all. So if you have four choices, get rid of the two choices, which is not, and then it's always that competition is going to be between those other two choices, which is actually the correct answer. And if you're not sure about it, mark it for review, come back and read the question again later and try to answer. So there is no rush. And also there is no negative marking. And did you notice that, Chris? Like it's so like if you don't know the answer, still try to think about what could be the correct answer, because there is no negative marking in terms of if you even choose a wrong answer, but don't leave any questions unanswered. That's what I would definitely ask you to do.
Yeah, and now that we're able to use Microsoft Learn, it's built right into the exam. If
That's
you
right.
do what you say and narrow the 4 down to 2, you'll save a lot of time. And yeah, you don't want to spend your whole exam time just
For every question.
reading
So that's
Learn,
what
reading Learn articles. Yeah.
that's right. Okay, so we are talking about PL-300 certification. Why are we talking about Fabric? Of course, because as you can see, Power BI is part of your Fabric. And so now you can see it is a complete ecosystem for an enterprise modern data platform. So previously, like we had products scattered, and now we have all the data is sitting in one format, in one lake, and in the Delta Parquet format. And of course, like all the different engines can read that format and can utilize it. So the main reason here for we have got the slide is to showcase like even though we have a PL-300 exam that is separate, but Power BI is part of the Fabric ecosystem. So that is something to keep in mind. So if I want to start with Power BI, everything starts with 3 different products, I would say. We have the Power BI desktop, and which is a free tool, and it's still a free tool. I'm so impressed with that, and with a lot of features it has got. So if you just use the Power BI desktop tool itself, like you can see how powerful the tool is. I can pull data from different data sources using the Power BI desktop. I can cleanse my data using Power Query within the Power BI desktop tool. I can model my data, and I can also build my visuals. So as a Power BI report developer, I can do everything what I require just with this free tool. Then when do I really need like a Fabric, or when do I need to just use the Power BI service or Power BI mobile? When I want to share what I have built, right? So if you want to share your reports, or if you have to build any dashboards, then probably you have to publish it inside Power BI service so that you can share it with other users and get their feedback. And the great thing is you have the Power BI mobile, so you can access your reports and dashboards really in there. And this is pretty cool because you can go ahead in terms of like how you will be able to handle a lot of things, right? Like for instance, if I go and meet salespeople and they don't have even a proper internet connection, so I just prepare the reports and take it to them, and then I can just have conversations with them, showing how things are progressing with those customers. So it is really important that you understand about these 3 components like the Power BI desktop, the Power BI service, and Power BI mobile. There is also another thing called Power BI embedded. So I work with a lot of ISVs, independent software vendors, and they have products. And their products also, they expose like a lot of operational and analytical reports as part of their products. And you can use Power BI embedded for that, where you can embed the Power BI reports, dashboards inside the product. So that is also something to consider, especially if you are an ISV. So this is the workflow I just wanted to talk to you about is like, if you think about PL-300, so each of this is going to take an important play an important part in the certification. So the ability, how do you connect to different data sources, whether it's files, databases, or cloud, or even Fabric semantic models. Then you have got how do you shape the data. So this is all about like I have first name and surname as 2 different columns, but I have to prepare a full name. So how do I go and transform that? So how do I format my currency? How do I format my dates? These are some of the things that you do in part of shaping your data. Then comes your modeling, and this is where you build your relationships, you design your star schema, any DAX measures that you want to create, you will go ahead and create that. And so you make sure like your model is intact so that it is going to help you in getting better perform reports. And then you have your reports, and this is when you start building your visuals. And you have to understand about like, okay, what are the insights that we are going to provide to our end users, what visuals are available out of the box, And also like how do I set up slicers or filters where people can just filter the data and have a look at it. And one of the important thing these days is all about the accessibility. So we are not just building reports for us all only, right? So we are also building reports for every single person who wants to get access to the report. So accessibility is becoming more and more core component. So not just building the report and making sure that report what we have built is going to be accessible for all the different stakeholders. And finally, once you build the report, it is all about sharing the report and securing the report. So that's exactly how the exam questions will be framed. So there are going to be questions across all these topics. And that's why it is good. Like when you're preparing for PL-300, one thing I definitely recommend is just do some hands-on. So take some sample data sets, play with the product, do some transformations. And there is a lot of hands-on labs available as part of PL-300 certification preparation. You can pretty much use that for that. So here you go. Chris, can you just share some insights about how do you go about preparing the data with Power BI?
Yeah, so this is just a short section. We've only got 3 slides, but as Anu said, this is 25 to 30% of the exam. But like in reality, and I think Kevin mentioned this in the chat, I think he said 50 to 60. Data prep is like closer to, I think, 80% of most of our workloads, right? We never get the clean data. So yeah, I mean, we're studying this exam not just to get that certification, right, but also to make ourselves better at this particular role. So this is definitely, we're going to start here. We're going to focus a lot of time here, and we've got to start off just, okay, well, where are we getting our data from? That's the first thing. If we're lucky, we've got a nice semantic model ready for us, and we can just connect to that and build our reports. But a lot of times we're actually going back to, the data sources and having to connect to them. So
yeah, so I would say the important tips I would suggest for this particular topic is all about understanding the different storage modes that we have got. Am I going to do import data, direct lake now we have got, or is it DirectQuery? And then how do you prepare the data so that you can make sure that you bring in only the necessary columns. So sometimes I work with a lot of tables, Chris, there will be 200 columns in there. And if you look at it, what I need for reporting is only 25 columns. So you can easily get rid of that and keep only the necessary rows and columns, because that is going to help you in terms of building really high performance reports. And also check the different data types, right?
Yeah, and for security as well.
Yeah.
We might have like a personal identifier in the table that we don't need in our report. Well, we don't need to bring that into our Power BI data set. So, just the columns that we really need.
Yeah, so when you're preparing for the exam, these are the things that you have to pay attention to when you're reading through those topics, because the questions will be related to that. Or when do I choose DirectQuery versus Direct Lake? Or okay, why should I focus on fixing the data types? What is it going to bring in? And so why sometimes they may even ask questions like, okay, the report is really slow. And they may say oh, there are 250 columns in that particular report. So pay attention to those areas when you're preparing the certification.
Yeah, and if you've ever had to work with data types, but you don't bring them in as a date, and then you try and write your DAX calculations to do date logic, you're going to run into issues. So
that's right.
Yeah, it seems like an easy thing, but you do it up front and you're going to save a lot of time. But like Annie said, storage mode is very important. This comes in a lot on the exam.
And I would suggest that it is important from the exam perspective, but also I would say this is really important from even from a day-to-day perspective. So whenever I have to go and work with a customer, this is the first important decision I need to take. So what is the storage mode I'm going to use?
Yeah, so first question comes up is what's the lag that's okay for our data? Does it need to be up to the second? Does it need to be exactly what's live in the source? If it does, we might have to use DirectQuery. But if we want to be faster and get better performance, maybe we do that daily refresh, right? And so we're our data is stored in the model. So any queries, anytime we do a slicer, that returns really quickly, but the data is only as old as our refresh. But maybe sometimes we have to get a mix. Let's say we've got a really large sales fact table, right? Maybe we use dual mode for that. So for the current month's sales, we do DirectQuery against like a filtered view. And so we're only pulling into the DirectQuery just that small piece that is this month's sales. Whereas we've already imported in, the last 20 years of sales that are never going to change. So we have that composite model. You'll see dual called composite model probably as much as you'll see it called dual. And then if you're using Fabric, you have this direct lake option, which kind of tries to be the best of both worlds. It skips the SQL endpoint and goes straight to the Parquet tables. So it's like doing DirectQuery on the tables, but because it's optimized for it, you get the performance in the right circumstances almost as good as if you were using import mode. So lots of stuff there. Definitely find out more about Direct Lake because there's a few little gotchas that mean you can't use it or the query will fall back to direct mode. Definitely do some looking up there. And then this slide, boy, is this slide doing a lot of work. Right.
That's the cleansing part, right? Yeah.
There's so much going on here, but we're set. We've got our data. We're seeing it for the first time. We might need to profile it. What does it look like? How is it distributed? Is it sales data that follows a normal distribution so we can look for outliers? And then we we maybe find some of those outliers, some of those data issues. Let's get to fixing them. Are there some obvious errors? Is there a way that we can fix those errors? Is there missing data that we can impute? Or do we just need to skip missing data? Is there duplicate data that we need to take out of the data set? Like I said, are there dates that are appearing as strings, maybe with weird stuff at the end that we need to turn back into a date? All that stuff, that's the clean part. And then we get shape, which maybe we've got a couple data sets and we're merging them together. We're doing a join to get them into one table. Maybe it's the other way. Maybe we're splitting them out. Maybe we have to pivot or unpivot, or do maybe we don't care about the full detail and we just want to get aggregations of the data to make our data set a little smaller. Or maybe the data is not in a nice tabular format. Maybe it's like semi-structured like XML or JSON. Can we reshape that into a table or multiple tables for us to work with it easier? We've got that.
I think this particular slide has got a lot of exam questions. I could definitely see that in there. So profiling, make sure what are the different ways of profiling and what the outputs each of the profiling method provides you. That's definitely an important question to say, okay, which is going to give me my unique values or distinct values. So these are things to watch for. And similarly, what I have noticed is even yesterday I was reading through a LinkedIn post and there was a difference between merge and explaining on merge. I think it was Reza's post. So it goes back to the fundamentals, what is the difference between merge versus append queries in Power BI? So again, this is an important exam question. They may give you an example and say okay, so if you apply merge, what would be the output will look like? Or if you apply append, how does the output will look like? So this particular slide alone, I would say there is a lot of exam questions embedded in here. So go through that concepts and prepare well, because if you will be able to easily crack some of these questions from this slide.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is really important for the exam, maybe not as much in your real life, but for the exam, there's always a couple ways to do these things, right? You might be doing a lot of this in your data flows, but in the data flows, you can drag and drop in the GUI, or you can actually write the M code. And sometimes the exam is going to want you to show how to do it in the GUI. And sometimes it's going to ask you to fill in the missing statements in a block of M code. So make sure that yeah, it's good to know how to do a merge or a pivot, but make sure that you know how to do it, both with the GUI and without.
Great. So now the time is I think Chris helped us in terms of preparing the data. So I will take you through in terms of what it takes to model the data and why we really need to do modeling. So as the slide description itself says, right? So why do we need to model is because if we have to have really fast reports and reports that are of really high performance, then we have to model the data. So modeling plays an important role. So I think quite a few of you, if you are new to modeling, I would definitely recommend to jump on MS Learn, and you will find an article specifically around star schema design itself. So understanding star schema design, what is a fact, what is a dimension, and that is really important for you to have the thinking to model your data. So here you are going to define which are going to be the fact tables, which are going to be the dimension tables. How do you build the relationship between the fact and dimension tables? And quite a few things that you will be doing in the model part is how do I build a hierarchy? How do I build a measure? And what is the difference between having a measure versus like a calculated columns? So these are important things that definitely in the exam that you will be looking at. And this is where I think when you are building measures and stuff you will be starting to use DAX. So I think this is actually the final way of preparing your data. So even though you talk about cleansing and things, model is where you will make sure that every metric that we require, that we want to use it in our reports, they're all defined as part of the modeling process. And that's why I said you need to have a specific mindset when you are actually designing this model. And a lot of people I have seen when they start building Power BI reports, immediately they just go and start with the visual. I would say this is once you have to get your data ready, which is preparing your data, you have to model your data, because if you do these two things perfectly, then your building your visuals is going to be pretty straightforward. Otherwise, you will go into building the visual and then you will go back and say, oh, I don't have this column. Oh, I haven't brought this into the model at all. So then you will be going back and forth with this. So if you see even in the Power BI Viz competitions and stuff, they make sure that they have the preparation done, the modeling done before they go ahead and build the visuals. So make sure to understand the relationships are there so that the model should reduce the ambiguity as it was talking about. So clearly distinguishing between what are the fact tables versus dimension tables, and what are the different types of dimension tables you get, like slowly changing dimensions. You have type 1, type 2, type 3. So trying to understand that. And also date tables. And so most of the times we deal with a lot of dates, like doing like a daily reporting, like a weekly reporting, monthly reporting, quarterly reporting, annual reporting. So we need to have date tables and understand what are the different ways how you can create date tables. So before Power BI, the way we used to create date tables is we write a T-SQL script and we populate we create insert statements to create a date table. But there are cool ways how you can create date tables in Power BI. You can still write a M query, as Chris was mentioning, and you can create, and it will automatically create a date table for you with all the different columns that you require. And also, like Chris mentioned about the composite or the dual thing, right? Mode, where there are some tables we will be having it in DirectQuery, some tables like import data. And date table is the classic thing. Nothing is going to change in the date table, right? So you can just keep them and import it and have a copy in there rather than going and querying as a direct query each time. So a good use case where you make use of the composite model here. And that's what it's really important. So try to understand from an exam point of view, look for understanding what is a star schema and how do you write DAX measures using DAX, and also the cardinality, like what is like a many to many, many to one to many, one to one, what those relationships are, because they will give you some examples and ask you to identify between these two tables, what is the right relationship that we should be giving. So these are some of the exam questions that you have to get prepared, especially in the modeling section of PL-300. So here you go, understanding how to write DAX queries. And so I think previously it was like I had to literally practice a lot attend a lot of like a DAX gurus sessions, to be honest, Chris, for me to get familiarized with DAX. And now with the help of Copilot and AI tools, like it's easy for you to learn DAX. So I think no excuses. So it's just more around, but you need practice. That is the important thing in here. And you may be asking the question, do I really need to know DAX to take up the exam? Yes, because that is going to be DAX related questions. Of course, you can't give excuse to say I can ask AI to create the DAX measure for me, but you need to know also how to validate it. Another important thing is performance. Just because you're writing a DAX measure, it is not going to perform well. So you need to know how do you optimize your DAX to get better performance, because you don't want your reports to be low performing because of the things. So understanding calculated columns are going to be like a row by row, it is have to calculate. So think about if you have billion rows, and if you're using a calculated column, it is going to do that for every single row. It is going to be slow. It will make your report slow every time when you refresh the report. Whereas measures will be more high performance. So it's just understanding when should I use calculated columns, when should I use measures, what are the pros and cons between them. These are important from an exam perspective. And also like year to date, month to date, like a prior period calculations. These are some of the time intelligence functions. How do you use it within DAX? And that's, again, you have to know about before you go and take up the PL-300 exam. So again, quite a few things that you need to practice on DAX, but they are simple. It's just I'm emphasizing the fact like you have to put some effort on preparing on these topics. So performance is part of the important part of the design aspect. So everything when you're designing, design clean schema, keep only the columns that you require, use the granularity. So if they want transaction level data in the reporting, you need to have that. If they ask you to say like, oh, if I have to drill a particular item, I have to see all the list of transactions related to that, then you have to set the grain accordingly. Think about measures, use some of the performance tools that comes with Power BI. So you have the performance analyzer, so which will tell you exactly when a report is loading, which particular visual is taking the time, and is it a DAX measure that is taking the time to load the report. So try to learn about how to use these tools and go for simple visuals and reduce complexity as much as you can. And also understand like how do you design highly performant DAX queries, and how do you use the tools that are available in Power BI natively. I'm not saying third-party tools, but native tools that you have got. And those are things that are going to help you to optimize your model before even you go ahead and build the reports.
All right, part 3, visualizing and analyzing our data. This is another 25 to 30% of our exam.
Right.
So what's the first piece? Oh, designing the report. So right off the bat, we want to match the visual type to the question. That means a couple different things to me, I think. So one thing is we want to consider who our audience is and what the purpose of the report. Is this a bunch of key performance indicators or KPIs for our C-suite? Then we want an executive dashboard style report. Is this a report that an analyst needs to be able to slice and dice and filter to dig into the data or to drill through? Then that's more an analytical type of report. Or is it something where somebody just needs like the full list of data? That might even be a paginated report that they're just going to, run on the screen, maybe even export to Excel. So we want to make sure you're doing the right type of report. But then when you're looking at a specific measure, was this something that fits well with a bar chart? So you can easily visually compare like a few different things next to each other. Is this something that would work well as a pie chart? Spoiler, no, you shouldn't be using a pie chart. There's much better options. But is it something where you're looking over maybe 4 years worth of data? A bar chart gets really, it's kind of tough to really see. So you might be better off doing like a line chart with some dots and maybe a best fit line in there as well. So try and match it up. And you want to keep things simple. You don't want more crazy colors than normal. There's a guy named Stephen Few that has written some really great books about visual design for clarity. So I would recommend any of his books to anyone following. So what's
And
next?
I think your report should be telling a story, right? That is important. So make sure just to be on. Like I also try to do some wireframes just to make sure what is my report is trying to convey to the user. So what are the things it should be incorporating? So if you want to do a bit of a wireframe, I would definitely recommend you doing that.
Yeah, I think that's what this slide is about. Power BI is great because it lets the users dive in and look at the data in ways that best work for them. So, different filters and slices. If we can add some tooltips to help our users with that, adding some buttons to make the reports kind of feel more like an app, especially if it's something that people are using on mobile. That's really going to kind of deepen the connection that the people have with that report. What's your favorite tip for storytelling, Anu?
I think I love the bookmarks, but tooltips are the main thing I would say. So I will make sure because sometimes you don't want to make your report too crowded with a lot of information. But when you mouse over an important metric, so if you can show what is really required in there, and also try to keep keep the information so concise in there, I would say. So you don't want to try to give all the information in the tooltip. Sometimes it's nice to even show some small report, like when you are mouse over as a tooltip, you can see another report that you could embed in there as a tooltip. So that is something I really like about. And mostly bookmarks, tooltips where possible, and buttons, especially if you have to navigate between the pages and you have to give a flow for people to jump onto a particular page directly, then usage of buttons are going to be really powerful. So one thing I would always try to think about is keep it simple. And that is one important part. And you don't need fancy visuals. I have seen a lot of, and I think this is where the Power BI the gallery, data story gallery is pretty good, because if you go there, there is a lot of example Power BI reports, and more specifically, all these database competition, what people have produced, it's there for you to learn in terms of how to build good visuals. And I think there is a wealth of information in there. It's just us taking the time and go through to figure out why certain things have been designed. And what I have seen, Chris, is a lot of reports just with built-in visuals, how they have really built them to tell good and great stories in there.
Yeah, you don't really need to do super
A lot of
fancy
custom.
things with
That's right.
animation. It's more about getting the data to the right people, telling the right story in a way that's clear and not misleading.
I think the one thing that puts me off is someone creating a pie chart, and it has got hundreds of partitions in there. I say, seriously? And how many colors, and how do I distinguish what is this pie chart is trying to do? And so it's just understanding which visual to use for what scenarios. And I think there is a good page on MS Learn also again for this, how do you pick the right visual for the right thing? So just I would suggest you to go and explore that, because before you choose every visual, just figure out is this the right visual for what I'm trying to display here?
Yep. And so our reports need to factor in accessibility and usability as well. Right? Ideally, we're going to get all these as requirements up front. That never happens, though, right? When was the last time you saw a requirement, Anu, that actually had the accessibility and usability features in?
Not for reports. I typically do that for web pages, but I think it's good that we are following that for the reports also, because we need to make the reports accessible for everyone, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of up to us to do that kind of automatically, because we don't usually, a lot of our users will forget about those pieces when they're putting their requirements together. Now, here it says add alt text where visuals need explanation, and I'm going to disagree with that a little bit. I'm going to say you want to add alt text to pretty much all your visuals, because you don't know if your user is going to be somebody with low vision or no vision that needs to use like a screen reader to access these things. So use alt text, everywhere. Yes, it's nice to add some context, but we really need to think about, hey, we might have an audience here that has some vision problems. Or we might have an audience that has maybe color blindness, so we need to check the contrast between our different colors. And there's some really good free websites out there where you can kind of put in the different hex codes for the different colors that you're using, and you'll see, do they have enough contrast to show up to make it legible. If we can, just as simple things as using big text and using sans serif fonts is usually said as something that is really good to help people with vision issues as well. So think about all those things. We're trying to get a wider audience for our report. Just because we don't have somebody with those issues in our audience today, we don't want to exclude those people from being in our audience tomorrow. So here, this
is like making your use of the AI tools. This is again important thing that you get to know in Power BI. So how you can use the built-in capabilities for doing exploratory analysis, like how do you identify anomalies or outliers? How do you analyze the data, grouping them or binning them, or using clustering methods? And also how do you use some of the cool visuals like key influencers or the decomposition tree? So if you're doing forecasting, you can also do forecasting with Power BI visuals. So that is always good, because a lot of customers, they would say oh, can you give me a forecast for the next 6 months or something? Now I can do that cool visuals by adding the forecasting lines in my visual to say oh, if the trend follows, this is how the values are going to look like. So keep in mind, these are some of the additional things that you can add with your Power BI reports.
Yeah, and this piece for me when I was going through the Learn modules, because I always think about writing this stuff in Python, right, or SQL, because I'm more in the data engineering world. And then I'm getting in there and I'm saying, wait, you can just select that from a drop down in Power BI? That's amazing. So
that's a good point, Chris, because you need to know how to do that, and that is what the important part from the exam perspective. So you touched on that, right? Why should I know this, or how I need to prepare it from an exam perspective? Exactly. How do I do binning? How do I use the key influencer visual? So those are the things you need to explore and see, so that you will be able to answer the exam questions.
Yeah.
Cool. The final topic is how do we manage and secure Power BI? So now we have created our visuals. Now it is all about how do we make sure the visuals are shareable. So the first thing is workspaces. So we will be creating workspaces, whether you are using Power BI Premium or whether it's Fabric. Go and create the workspace, and sometimes you create workspaces more specific to your business domain. So if you're doing reports, creating reports for sales, then you can create a sales workspace, and then you can upload your reports, and then you can start giving access to who are the people who should need access to this report. So that's the important part. So you need to have a think about okay, how am I, what is the workspace I'm going to create? How am I going to share this report with my stakeholders? And also how do I organize them? So how do I put the reports? How do I put the data flows? How do I put the models and stuff? Should I focus on item level permissions, or should I create apps and give access to users via the apps? So these are some of the ways how you can actually collaborate the reports with your stakeholders. So from an exam perspective, it is important to understand how to create workspaces, what are the different roles that are available that you can provide access to the workspace, and how do you, what are the different ways you can share reports? Do I want to share just the Power BI report, or do I want to share the semantic model also? So how do I go about sharing it? Do I do item level or workspace level sharing? And how do I do that? So these are exam level questions that you need to be thinking about. And also a few other things to think about. Sharing is not one thing. you need to look at depending on who the audience is. So I can just share reports or dashboards to specific users. I'll try to reduce it, especially if my user base is growing like 5 or 10, because I don't want to share it to every single person. Or you can package them into an app, and then you can share it with a broader user groups. Or you can embed. So ISVs, I told you, right? They want to embed the Power BI content inside their products or something. You can go ahead and do that. In addition to that, you can also get reports to be scheduled and emailed to you. So this is some common thing people say, like, oh, can you say, get this report to be emailed to me on a daily basis so that I can see the up-to-date numbers every day? Subscriptions will help you to do that. And I would definitely encourage, like, how do you go about creating a subscription or creating an alert using Power BI service or inside Fabric, and then endorsement. So the data sets, one of the cool thing about Power BI is like you can endorse the data sets, like saying, oh, this is something that is certified, or this is something that is promoted. What is the difference between them? So for instance, if it is certified, then basically you are saying, this is valid, the data set, and the report that you are seeing, you can trust and utilize it. Promoted is, oh, this is something I have created, like it is not certified yet, but you can start using it. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. So it's understanding what are the different types of endorsements we have got, and because that definitely will be an exam question. What type of endorsement definition? They will give a definition and they'll say like what type of endorsement it is. And learn about the Power BI gateways, because sometimes your data may be sitting on premises and then the report will be on Power BI service. So how do you establish the gateway, especially if you're using direct queries and things? So you can have the fresh content to be served via the Power BI report. And also we have to look at the performance in that scenario, because when you use direct query, pay attention to like what are the pros and cons of the different storage modes, because if you have to improve the performance for direct query, you have to go to the source. So the source can be your SQL server in the organization or something. Make sure that has enough capacity to serve for your reporting needs that you have got. So pay attention to those areas. And as I told you, right, security is an important part. So you have to look at what are the different workspace roles, understand the differences between each role, what permissions like admin gets versus member gets, contributor or viewer. Every time when you're answering a security question, keep in mind about the least privilege, right? Basically, what it means is if a particular person needs only that permission, just give that permission. They don't need any additional permissions at all. And they will, in the question itself, they specifically ask for pick the right role and based on the principle of least privilege. And if they say that explicitly, then you have to be more careful, like what is the right role that you are choosing for that question. Item level access, as I told you, whether it is like a report level or semantic model level, how do you do role level security in Power BI? And also like how do you apply sensitivity labels with the Power BI data set? So these are things that you have to understand that is important from an exam perspective. So row level security, as I told you, what is the difference between them? Because how do you filter the rows? If I'm logging in as a sales manager, I should see all my sales people's data. But if I'm logging in as a salesperson, I should see only my data. How do you achieve that in Power BI? And also like the different protection settings we talked about, right? From a governance perspective, how do I apply sensitivity labels? How do I export the settings that is influence on how the data leaves the reports? So anything to do with data, you have to be really extra careful around how do you protect it and what options are there in Power BI to protect it. So when you're preparing for the exam, study by scenario. So how do I prepare the data? Like what should I connect to? How do I clean it? How do I shape the data? How do I model the data? What DAX measures are really required? How should I design? So this is where wireframes comes into, and also like who are the people who need access to this report, and how do I secure it? How do I govern it? So these are some of the things that even when you're practicing with a sample data set, think through these things and just figure out like why you have to do things in the right way.
Yeah, Anu, we're just about time's up here. We're right about on the 60. Do you have time to give us a quick pitfall? That's your top pitfall or your top tip for the exam before they kick us out?
Yeah, no issues. Like I think just to focus on the DAX Pro things, import things like import only the certain columns that you require. Try to use built-in visuals wherever possible. Focus on accessibility, and also like make sure like you give the right permissions for the right people.
Yeah, for me, I think now that it's great that we have the ability to use Learn on the exam. So practice using Learn, practice using the filter section so that when you bring back hundreds of results, you're only filtering that back to the Power BI specific results. And that'll really
Okay.
help you kind of prioritize on your exam.
And this is the fast review of what are the things that you need to remember, everything that we covered, and make sure that request for your voucher, prepare for your exam, and try to take the PL-300 exam and be successful. There are practice assessments available. You can take some practice test questions before you take the real exam. Join the study group, and that is a wealth of resources available. It's all about trying to make use of them and utilize them.
Yeah, just want to point out real quick, I think that was an older slide. We don't currently have PL-300 vouchers available, just for DP-600, DP-700, and DP-800 as well. Hopefully in the future we get some more, and in the future I'm sure you'll see both Anu and I again. I'm sure you'll see our great moderators, Kevin, Heidi, and Taylor. Thank you all so much for taking all the questions. I think
And thanks
that's all
everyone.
we've got, right?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. It was great. And thanks everyone for joining our session today. So hope you have got some lot of tips and tricks. And yeah, go ahead and prepare for PL-300 and get certified. And definitely you will see the value when you are preparing the certification itself. You will see how much you didn't know about Power BI that you will get to learn.
Great. Well, it was great hanging out with you for an hour, Anu. Great hanging
Yeah,
out with everyone online. And yeah,
sure,
goodbye.
Chris.
We'll see you soon.
Bye. See you, everyone.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. This session is a part of a series. To register for future shows and watch past episodes on demand, you can follow the link on the screen or in the chat. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find that link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.